Hey everybody, and welcome to Flick Connection, the show that usually helps you get more out of movies, but today we're going to be looking at 10 really weird shows on Netflix that are well worth binge watching. So in this video, I've got a list of 10 shows currently available on Netflix that are super bizarre. If that's your type of thing, this is gonna be your video. Odds are you're gonna find one of your new favorite shows on this video because these are all lesser known shows. By the way, the full list of all the shows I talk about is in the top pinned comment down below, along with a link from our sponsor, CyberGhost VPN, but I'll tell you about them later in the video. Let's go ahead and start this list all the way at the back with one that came out just a couple of years ago called Russian Doll. Now on the surface, this show is essentially the same concept as Groundhog Day. A woman keeps dying and waking up in the same place on her 36th birthday. However, this was written and created by Natasha Lyonne, who also stars in it. And I gotta say, not only is she great in it, I'm not quite sure anybody else could have done this role. It fits her style perfectly. Prior to this, it had been a while since I had really seen her in anything I really liked, but this show fits her style perfectly. It's got a lot of dry humor, and it's definitely a little more for the artsy crowd. Even though I did feel like I was rewatching the same concept again, it did have enough, and I mean just enough that was different about it to help it stand out, but also the setting, the characters, Natasha's performance all made this something unique and different enough, but I did have to rank it at the back of this list. Now Netflix is home to a handful of really odd reality shows like The Circle and Love is Blind, but their newest is not only their weirdest, it's gotta be the weirdest reality show I've ever seen, if you can even call it that. I'm talking about Sexy Beast.
I want to get married, I want to have babies before I'm like 26. Do you have health insurance?
Now, this is only a few episodes long, and this is your boilerplate dating show. There's nothing really special about it, except for the fact that they dress everyone up in these elaborate masks. And when I say elaborate, they're really elaborate. They're not just impressive looking, they're really bizarre and off-putting at the same time. So you've got this really weird, wacky veneer on top of, like I said, a boilerplate dating show. Super superficial people.
Ass first, personality second.
But the fact that they dressed them up in this really ridiculous way actually put a new spin on it that worked for me. Like I said, it's only a few episodes long. It's worth a handful of laughs. Even if you generally don't like junk television like this one may be worth a dabble. So I stand by the fact that that's one of the weirdest reality shows, but also one of the strangest sketch comedy shows is on Netflix, and it also happens to be one of my favorites right now. It's called I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson.
Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window!
Driver's gone. Somebody call the cops. We need to find that driver.
They could have killed someone.
Whose car is this?
Yeah, come on. Whoever did this, just confess. We promise we won't be mad.
Now the story with this show is that Tim Robinson actually used to work for Saturday Night Live. He was a writer. He's done quite a few other things. You might even recognize him, but this show has kind of put him on the map in the comedy world. It's really wild, far out there sketches that would clearly never be seen on a show like Saturday Night Live, and that is what I love about this show. Some of them are a little bit too weird. I didn't find them particularly funny, but there's quite a few on here that have left me in stitches that I've rewatched multiple times. As far as current sketch comedy shows, things being made right now, for my money, this is the funniest. On a similar note, there is one season of a show called With Bob and David, which is essentially like a reunion season for Mr. Show. That's really weird too. If you're a fan of what Bob Odenkirk and David Cross did with Mr. Show, then I think you will like I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. Okay, now we're gonna switch gears in a big way because my next pick is from Japan, and it is a mix between Alice in Wonderland and Saw. But Alice in Borderland is actually actually a live-action remake of an anime series called Alice in Borderland. And in the show, a group of people are reluctantly thrust into a life or death game. Now, I do have to say, as much as I liked this show, there is an odd element to it that I think is just a cultural thing that does not translate from Japan to American audiences. And without giving anything away, I'll just say there are scenes where people are sharing their feelings. There's one in the beginning where they're sort of happy and out in the middle of traffic, and it's just really bizarre and kind of soap opera-y in a really weird way. But then you jump into really bizarre, wild stuff with a dark, hard edge to it. Again, life or death games that are tricky. You can try to figure the games out before the people do, but they're very, very tricky and very clever. And each episode is essentially a new game, and the players never know what they're gonna be thrown into, and you as the audience don't know what's gonna happen because it is so dramatically different with dramatically different rules every time. And then things continue to escalate. There may be a second season coming out, but right now there's just the one. If I've sold you on it and you don't mind some odd dubbing or reading subtitles, Alice in Borderland is gonna be the pick for you. But don't forget, I did tell you there's some bizarre moments, just power through them, and it's worth the wait. Okay, so my number 6 pick is actually the newest release on this list. It just came out a week, less than a week prior to me filming this. It's called Brand New Cherry Flavor. Now this is a limited series. They only have plans to do the one season, but this is a bizarre, wild ride, and it is the reason I decided to make this list. This show takes place in the early 90s in Los Angeles and revolves around a young filmmaker trying to make it in Hollywood. You've got sleazy producers, an interesting soundtrack, kind of a cool look to it. So all of that stuff's cool enough, but then halfway through the first episode, they introduce Catherine Keener's character, and she makes this show. Now, Rosa Salazar, who you might recognize, maybe not, because her face is different, but you may recognize her from Alita Battle Angel. She is the star of the show, and she does a great job in the show. But Catherine Keener is someone I've enjoyed watching for years. She's almost always exceptional, but this is, I think, some of her best work. For lack of a better word, she plays a witch in this show, and she has a lot of fun with this performance. She does some little subtle creepy things. She does some really entertaining things. I really dig her character. Again, for me, she makes the show. But fair warning, this is one of the weirdest ones on this list. To me, this felt like David Lynch meets David Cronenberg. If you know what that means, and you like the way that sounds, this is gonna be a great show for you. If those names don't sound familiar, David Lynch is most famous for shows like Twin Peaks and movies like Mulholland Drive, and there's definitely elements from all of his work in this show. But then you've also got David Cronenberg, who's famous for movies like Naked Lunch and Existenz with weird, creepy body horror stuff that gets bizarrely sexual. That's in the show too. So again, if that intrigues you, this is gonna be your new favorite show. If you don't like Cronenberg's weird sex body horror stuff and you don't like David Lynch, I'm telling you right now, I will be shocked to find out that you enjoyed Brand New Cherry Flavor. So if you're watching this video, it's because you have trouble finding things to watch, like most people. And hopefully you get something to watch off of this video in less time than it normally takes you to find something. But let's say you're still stuck, you're still trying to find something to watch. I highly recommend today's sponsor, CyberGhost VPN. Like all VPNs, they keep your web browsing safe, secure, private. It is a smart idea to invest in one. In fact, it's a little reckless to not have one set up, but if you're gonna have one, CyberGhost VPN has specialized servers that allow you to watch Netflix as if you're in a variety of countries. Now, just as an example, and keep in mind, there's a variety of countries, but right now in Netflix Italy, they have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Rick and Morty, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Jurassic World, and Spider-Man Far From Home. All hits that are not available on Netflix US and likely not available in other countries. Again, you can watch these with the flick of a switch. Even though CyberGhost is super easy to use, they still have 24/7 customer support, so they're there to help you get it set up on multiple devices. Speaking of devices, you can use it on up to 7 at the same time, and it's all the different types of devices you're already used to using, and they offer a unheard of 45-day money-back guarantee. So you can try this thing out for a good solid 6 weeks and get a full refund if you don't like using it. Right now, my viewers can pay as little as $2.19 a month for this service when they use the link in the description below. That's less than half the cost of one new release movie rental, and you will have access to way more content than you could possibly ever watch, and it's gonna be good stuff too. It's one of the best deals I've ever been able to offer on this channel. I highly recommend checking out that link in the description below, but let's move on with the top 5 shows on this list.
There's no accounting for taste, is there? Audiences, they're useless.
Bill Hader and Fred Armisen have been on a ton of great shows. They are both comedy legends, but in terms of quality and doing something that I think is really unique and special, Documentary Now is one of their greatest achievements. This show is actually hosted by Helen Mirren, and each episode is a parody of a different but famous documentary. So these guys do all sorts of interesting characters on the show, and there's a lot of great guest stars on the show as well. And I can tell you, it is funny enough if you don't know what they're parodying, but if you know the documentary that they're doing a parody of in any kind of sense, this show is comedy gold. And you can watch them in any order. My personal favorite episode is Juan Likes Rice and Chicken. It's sort of a parody of Euro Dreams of Sushi.
It's the only 3-star Michelin restaurant I know of that's a 40-minute walk from the nearest road.
See, we love the way good food tastes, but what we really love is authenticity of style and honesty of preparation. So this is a really big deal for us. We should have brought water.
Well, that wasn't on the reviews.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna comment on that.
But every episode is just, again, comedy gold. If you like either of those guys, this show is gonna be a must-watch, especially if you like classic documentaries. Odds are you'll find several episodes in this show that mirror some of your favorite documentaries. Now, Robert Downey Jr. and his wife actually produced my next pick. It was released just a couple of months ago, and even though I do recommend it and it ranks fairly high on this list, I will say I think they released this show a little too early. Sweet Tooth is based on a graphic novel series by the same name, and it revolves around this apocalyptic virus, or at least the aftermath of one, and you do see a lot of the onset of this virus. Crowded hospitals, people dying on gurneys. It's a lot to show to the world at this moment in time. My honest opinion is if you've spent any kind of time in the hospital with family members, or if anyone died during COVID, this show is gonna be a little too intense for you. That's my recommendation. But if not, it is also this beautiful story about this little hybrid boy that's got antlers. In the future, these hybrid people are born, yet they're hunted down because people think they might be responsible for the virus. So you get this amazing post-apocalyptic thing where everything's overgrown, but you also get kind of a coming of age thing with this little boy. And I gotta be honest, the coming of age stuff at this point in my life, I'm 36, it doesn't interest me that much right now. However, I enjoyed this show. I thought everything else going on was so interesting and clever, and more importantly, it was unique. Like, the show's got a dark, heavy edge to it at times, but then it's got this levity to it, and this very bizarre balance that I was not really familiar with. It actually took me a couple episodes to get into this show, but it's one of the cooler, more interesting things I think Netflix has released this summer. Now, my next pick premiered in February of 2021, and it already has 2 seasons you can binge watch. And if you're a fan of the recommendations that I really push, the stuff that I really like, the wild, over-the-top stuff, you are gonna love Sky Rojo. Now, this is actually from Spain. It is Spanish language, but if you don't like reading subtitles, there's a dubbed version that is quite good. But the show revolves around this huge, lavish brothel and these women that commit a crime and then go on the run. And I'll be honest here, the show does look a little clickbaity. It looks like they just got scantily clad women with guns and a lot of violence, and it's over the top, and it's just trying to get you to watch it. I will say this is a top-notch show. It's really fun, really well written, and not just the dialogue. I'm talking about like all the little twists and things that happen in the journey of these, for lack of a better word, prostitutes. It's wild, crazy stuff. I have not finished season 2, but I can vouch for season 1. It's great stuff, and it's 30 minutes, so you can actually binge watch the whole first season rather quickly. Now, my next pick is another limited series. It's only 1 season and it will remain that way, but it is criminally underwatched despite the fact that it was directed from the same director as season 1 of True Detective, stars Emma Stone and Jonah Hill. Maniac somehow still slipped under people's radar.
Do you know where you are right now?
I'm in a drug trial.
What would you say this trial is showing you about yourself?
Is this therapy now?
It's not therapy. It's science.
Now, it's a little hard to tell whether this takes place in the future or a slightly alternate reality, but the production design is really interesting on this show. The costumes, the sets, everything is kind of bizarre but has this retro quality to it that's really cool. And without going into too much detail, they become part of a psychological experiment that causes them to revisit memories and things, but also it's like a dreamlike state. They're in like different time periods and worlds as they go through this process. You've also got really great supporting roles from Justin Theroux, Sonia Mizuno, and Sally Field. Julian Gardner from Ozark is in it as well. Just really well cast, really well acted, and every single episode is unique and different. They broadcast some stuff that's coming to keep you interested, but you still have no idea what's gonna happen. I really dug everything about this show, but above all else, I really appreciated how different and unique it was. That doesn't always work, but it worked in Maniac. My honest recommendation is if you clicked on this video because you want to see a weird show, this one's weird and top quality at the same time. Now, believe it or not, my #1 pick on this list of weird Netflix shows is actually a docu-series. And no, despite the shirt, it's not Tiger King. Don't F with Cats is one of the most interesting, riveting docu-series I have ever watched. And if you're a longtime subscriber, you know I love the true crime stuff that Netflix puts out. I think it's almost all quality stuff, but Don't F with Cats was a wild ride. Now, the less you know about this one, the better, but don't confuse this one as being something that's super cat friendly. In fact, if you love cats and can't stand anything horrible happening to them, do not watch this show. But what seemed like kind of a fun, quirky little internet investigation thing in the first episode turns into one of the wildest crime capers I've ever seen play out on screen. And it's really well told. It will keep you glued to the seat. It manages to somehow be incredibly entertaining and morbid at the same time. Whereas sometimes with these true crime shows, they just suck the life out of you. You lose faith in humanity. I don't want to watch them anymore because they're so dark. Don't F with Cats goes there, but man, is it interesting. I don't know how to sell this one any harder than that. Let me know in the comments below what weird shows you've enjoyed recently on Netflix, and also help me thank the Patreon supporters. They're the reason I step out and do videos like this one that are a little different than things I would normally do. So if you find your new favorite show on this list, you have them to thank. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the video description. If you want to support the channel, you could also consider becoming a channel member so you get access to exclusive videos right here on YouTube. But I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this episode, and you will see me on the next one.